This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road, Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I want to welcome to the show today. Live with us is Terry Batcher.
Hello. Hello.
Good morning. And
Hi.
Nolan Del Campo.
Good morning, Terry and Annette.
Good morning. And by phone, we have Harriette Sucher.
Yeah, weather's not cooperating here.
Yeah.
So I said,
that's okay. We got plenty to talk about without the weather being involved. I actually wanted to start with something I found in your D.B. Cooper Solved book, because as I was going through it and getting ready for the content, which I did in like the midnight hour last night, because Nolan and I spent 3 days in San Diego going to court. And literally, as I'm putting this stuff together, I found this anagram that you had done of Daniel B. Cooper. So I wanted to ask, I know that they labeled him as D.B. Cooper because they found a D.B. Cooper in, I believe, Oregon. But the ticket name was Daniel Cooper. So why did you add the B in there?
Because I was getting to know the code system quite well. And I thought, let's see, I was throwing something at the wall. Let's see what sticks here. And I came out with, this was having something to do with this particular caper.
Well, in that anagram, you came up with, by anagramming out Daniel B. Cooper, you came up with RN B Dole E CIA Op, which you then expounded on by putting together Richard Nixon, Bob Dole, which was a senator, Emeritus CIA Op. Can you tell us what that means?
That this was... I was learning about the same time period as I was putting the book together, before that anyways, that Hoffa got himself into some serious trouble by tipping off some information in Vietnam. He was trying to use his bartering tips to, get him out of prison early, and that he was tipping off some people where our CIA agents in Vietnam were. So that was just another reason to bring down Hoffa.
So what is Emeritus?
He's the Emeritus at the time. So Hoffa doesn't really know. Maybe he does know, but they're looking to bring him down any way, shape, or form. I was shocked. I said, okay, E for Emeritus. And he was. He was the Emeritus president in 1971 for the Teamsters Union.
Bob Dole was?
No,
not Bob Dole. Bob Dole was definitely linked with Nixon on a lot of things.
Republican.
This is a little uncomfortable for me.
He was a high-ranking congressman.
Or his congressman.
Yes.
High-ranking. Yeah.
Republican.
Yeah.
Right.
So Richard Nixon and Bob Dole have a connection, and then Emeritus alludes to Hoffa.
Yeah, they were going to bring down Hoffa. One of the other reasons was he was betraying, in their view, according to this solve, the United States of America. So he had to go. So they were trying to do anything. This has to do with this microfilm information that I was seeing as I'm doing this. My God, what was our country doing? Taking pictures of Zhou Enlai in a bedroom, compromising pictures. That's what I'm seeing.
Who?
Oh my God, Zhou Enlai, the then president. Yeah, the then high-ranking president of Communist China, and they were getting pictures of him, and a lot going on here. They were using it to. They were using it to try to stop the Vietnam War, and they got these pictures, and then you got Hoffa allegedly, finding this information and data and trying to use it as bartering chips. Really very complicated. Nothing I was expecting, but it was hitting home for me because my father was going to Vietnam a couple of times a year, hazard duty merchant marine, and bringing our supplies into the war zones. So anyways,
Gotcha.
a lot going on.
All right.
Mhm.
Well, that brings us to where we left off last week. We began to talk about the episode DB Cooper, Where Are You? With Bruce Smith, who seems to be the lead man, I would state, in regards to the DB Cooper caper and his famed suspect, I guess, Rackstraw, I think his name is. I think that by the time we got done with this particular documentary, you could definitely exclude Rackstraw. So we'll get to that as we go.
Mm-hmm.
We started to talk about the events. So the day before Thanksgiving on November 23rd, 1971, Northwest Orient 727 Flight 305 was skyjacked from Seattle, Washington, actually from mid-flight, and circled for 2.5 hours until the extortion demands were ready on the ground. The flight plans of Flight 305 was originating in Washington, D.C. and stopped in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Great Falls, Montana, Missoula, Montana, Spokane, Washington, and Portland, Oregon being the last stop. He had Tom Colbert with the news media in there, and I equated him somehow to Tom Boyd. I'm not sure why, but the passenger, Bill Mitchell, was a college sophomore from Portland. The stewardesses were Florence Schaffner and Tina Mucklow. Tina Mucklow printed this note based on what Daniel Cooper told her to write. I'm not sure if she wrote it. I'm not sure if he handed her a note and told her to rewrite it. Or do you know how that worked, Terry?
Not exactly sure. It's been a while since I read up on this, but it seems to me she tried to copy it as closely as she could. He had her copy it side by side with him. And that's why.
Well, and this looks like something she wrote well after the fact, because it says beneath it, it says, "Miss, I have a bomb in my briefcase and want you to sit by me." And then it goes on to say, he told me to write it in a piece of paper upon his request. So why would you write that at the time? Unless this was written.
Seems like it's after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the original note was given to her. She wrote what he wrote and tried to emulate his handwriting, but he took back the original note and she took the one she wrote up to the cabin.
Right. And so this little statement of he told me to write it in a piece of paper upon his requests. I suppose that could have been done at the time, but you would think that he would have stopped her from doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, if she was sitting right next to him, he wouldn't have. Yeah.
My guess would be to say he wanted.
I think you're right, Nanette, that this was written after the fact as a recreation.
But
yeah, recreation.
From the way it looks, though, with the details and everything. And
I do like that the and sign is literally the and sign, which we know that is stereotypical Jack and Zodiac and sign. So if she was attempting to mimic it in some way, I'm not shocked.
So. I think so because it's so screwy, and how many people, especially a woman like that, they usually have really consistent and nice handwriting, and look at how wacky the whole thing is. The whole thing is just distorted, and
it is. But she could have
been
shaky. She could have been stressed. She could have definitely been stressed. So that might have caused
something we could revisit later, armed with a little more detail. And
what we do know is that if it affects your brain, it's going to affect if it's going to affect your brain, it's going to affect your handwriting. And you have to imagine this type of scenario definitely affected her brain. And what was that, Nolan?
Can I digress for a second on Bob Dole? So in 1976, he was the vice presidential candidate with Gerald Ford against Jimmy Carter. They lost. And then in 1996, he ran against Clinton for president. He was a Republican nominee, and he lost to Clinton in 1996.
Huh.
He also had a bad wing. He had a bad arm from his war hero, I think World War II injury. Mm-hmm. So he was disabled in one arm. So he was kind of the all-American boy hero, and he was well liked within what he did. But I don't think he was one of those guys that ever got himself in any trouble. He stayed pretty clean. So.
That's odd.
Yeah, you'd think that would. Maybe he was too clean. Who knows? I don't know.
All right, so these are notes that I actually.
He was on Viagra. He was on Viagra in the 90s. That's what I remember about him.
Oh yeah.
Those Viagra
Why was he making it public? Was he making
commercials?
Was he? Oh, did he make commercials up for it?
I barely remember that, but
yeah,
that's right. I don't remember what those commercials.
And then
that scares me.
Yeah. Then they had the Clinton Monica Lewinsky thing going on at the same time, and all the jokes about Bob Dole and the Viagra. Bob Dole must have sold the Viagra to Clinton to do it in the White House. I mean, anyways, we're getting too sidetracked.
All right. Yeah.
Wouldn't roll out of bed.
Back to the story.
Keep him from rolling out of bed.
Yeah, let's get off the Viagra, guys. So basically, this is the notes that I took as I watched the documentary. So I'm just going to give some briefs on it. It stated that the suspect had olive complexion, Latin appearance, medium smooth skin, dark brown or black hair that was combed back. Possibly brown eyes. Suspect put on dark wraparound glasses during latter part of flight, which actually kind of contradicts the passenger, Bill Mitchell, who said he was wearing sunglasses before they took off. So I'm not sure at what point in time he removed those for them to be able to tell what color his eyes were, or put on these wraparound glasses, or if they were one and the same. I really couldn't make that one out either. The race is white. People. What's that?
They're two different people, because Jack isn't olive complected, and the suspect, DB Cooper suspects I've seen, are not olive complected. They're pretty much white.
I know. We're going to get to that. Okay, so he was dressed in a black suit with a white shirt, a narrow black tie, a black rain type overcoat, and he knew it would be raining. So he obviously, and that plays back into that ham radio thing that Jack's a part of, is getting the weather and knowing what's coming on the weather before anybody else does, because you're getting it over the airwaves, right, Terry?
Right.
I see you nodding that head. He drank bourbon, which was Crown, on the plane. He was a heavy smoker, Raleigh cigarettes. He asked for $200,000 and 4 parachutes. He circled for 2.5 hours until everything was set on the ground. He shut all the windows on the airplane, and he had a big battery connected to dynamite sticks in an attaché. We like that, the attaché.
Right, which would probably fake, but anyway, keep going.
Right.
It was fake. I don't know if he got that far, but it was fake.
We're going to get there, but I know you keep talking about that, and we're going to get to that too. He bought the ticket that day, purportedly, and he must have purchased it either in Missoula, Montana, or at least one of the stops. I haven't figured that one out yet, but does not mean that he didn't come in on the originating flight from DC, as I suggested earlier, as he left from the DC Freeway Phantom stuff, and he could have bought his ticket at each stop as he got there, making him basically untrackable. And who knows what name he used for those tickets as he traversed across the United States. This is the beginning of mass travel on airplanes, they said. All skyjackings were political at this time, which leads us right back to the mob and Zodiac. So if all skyjackings are political, then I'm not too far off the base to say that the Zodiac was something political as well. Flight was headed to Reno from Spokane, Washington, per Jack DB Cooper's request. The skyjacker asked for 250 miles per hour, flaps down at a minimum height. The pilots didn't even know the plane could go that slow and low, it said. They flew over an area called the Dark Divide. Do you know what that is, Terry?
Dark Divide means all be pine trees. And there's water or pine trees. There's very few open areas with something like that.
Gotcha.
So
says he was not nervous. It says he was not nervous. We know that to be a Zodiac Killer MO, especially as he walked to the Presidio after killing Paul Stein. He walked looking as if he was just some normal person walking down the street. He hadn't just committed a murder. He was nice, as described by Mucklow. He sent Mucklow to the cockpit and told her don't come out. At 8:12 p.m., the pressure in the cabin changes, pilot's ears pop, and the aft stairs went down. He takes off the tie and he leaves it, which I think is another one of those clues that the Zodiac states that he's always left behind. They searched Woodland East Aerial, and they had fingerprints on the ticket. So where are these fingerprints, folks? Again, we're back to, square one, lost info or lost. We'll never know. We'll never see it.
Wasn't it a clip-on tie?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
J.C. Penney's. J.C. Penney's clip-on.
So suspects per Bruce Smith throughout this documentary mentioned Richard Floyd McCoy. He was a composite lookalike, but suspect wrote that it was incorrect. But the suspect actually wrote the FBI to say that the composite that they drew was incorrect. He jumped out of a 727 plane 4 to 5 months after Cooper. So evidently he either was attempting to mimic or show that it could be done. I'm not sure what the purpose of jumping out of a 727 is, unless you just like the parachute. What's that?
Oh, he almost got away with it, but he did get busted. So.
Oh, Richard McCoy?
Yeah, but it was stupid to try it after because everybody was on alert, of course. So.
Right. Then his next suspect was Dwayne Weber. He was an insurance salesman and a career criminal, aka the mob, who gives a deathbed confession, but he looks nothing like the composite, which ironically makes him a better suspect than McCoy, because the suspect said your composite is wrong. And let's see. Ooh. But he lacked any parachute training. I thought that was a buzzkill. Like, how are you going to give us this guy as a suspect if he doesn't know how to jump out of a plane?
Yeah, he's not going to jump out.
You're going to like this one, Harriette. Barb Dayton confessed to being DB. He used to be a man named Bobby. So what is what is the deal with all of these individuals like John Mark Carr? Once they get caught up or wrapped up in the middle of this mess, they go and turn themselves into a woman so nobody can identify them again.
So you
one of the books I read, she is one of the primary suspects.
That's what it says here.
Barb Dayton, she's
used to be a man named Bobby, was a merchant marine, just like you were talking about, and a librarian. So I'm assuming when he was a man, he was a merchant marine, and as a female, he was the librarian.
You have to come across the Tina Mucklow.
Hold on, one at a time. Go ahead, Harriette.
Sorry. Oh, me? You haven't come across the Tina Mucklow surprise.
I know.
We'll code in this.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
There's a lot going on.
Okay, Harriette, we're going to get to that. Nolan, what did you want to say?
I've seen pictures of Barb as a man and a woman, and I've seen her in a woman in like a jumping flight suit. So she had skills, parachuting skills.
Right. It says she was a merchant.
And she both.
He was a merchant marine, so undoubtedly, right? Is that something that your father would have learned, Harriette?
As a merchant marine, he had a lot of training. He was Navy. He was also Navy. He was Navy because of the thing in World War II. Before World War II, he became Navy Reserve. So, he had a lot of training, yes.
Well, I did notate that this is eerily like John Mark Carr, right? The man admits to a crime and then becomes a woman. So we had John Mark Carr, who takes credit for John Benet Ramsey, but then ultimately is found innocent. He had enough information to get them on board and believe that he was, to bring him all the way back here to the United States. And then once he gets here, they release him of charges. They can't find his computer, so he's no longer up for pedophile charges in Sonoma County. And then he becomes a woman afterwards. So there seems to be this.
I think he had connections.
I have an objection to that because there's footage of John Mark Carr post the.
No. Let's not. When we get to John Mark Carr, I'm only using that.
He's a switch hitter.
Okay, yes, but I'm only using that as an analogy for another person who makes or admits to something they claim to have done and then ultimately becomes a woman afterwards.
He was a phony, but he never turned into a woman per se. So
John Mark Carr?
No, he's actually really butch, sporting a wig and everything, being a real tough guy these days.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, all right. Then there was Ken Christensen, who worked for Northwest Orient, who was bought out evidently by Delta Airlines in the end. I don't know that there was very much information on this Ken Christensen other than he worked for Northwest Orient, but that doesn't necessarily make him a parachuter. Just because you work for the airline, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who work for the airline have never jumped out of one of those good running airplanes. Sheridan Peterson worked at Boeing, which was another one of their options. And then I said mob, aka drug trafficker Ron Carlson, claims in 2011 to know who DB is, claims he ran drugs and met Dick Briggs in 1978, who was a cocaine supplier. I think this is too braggy. I mean, honestly, that's my personal opinion, but I think if you knew who pulled that heist, you wouldn't even ever mention their name or you'd be dead, right?
Well, something.
Perhaps, yeah.
How does he know?
But I've seen those two names come up in documentaries on DB Cooper, though. Briggs.
Yes.
There's so much different disinformation about DB Cooper. It's all a sideshow.
Yeah.
It's just
so this Ron Carlson.
DB Cooper had inside connections as well.
Absolutely, 100%, and enough to disseminate information so that it pointed into different people or different patsies or what have you. Dick Briggs, Ron Carlson is actually on the DB Cooper documentary that we're talking about right now. And he is stating that this Dick Briggs told him that he knew Ron Carlson said that Dick Briggs was the actual DB Cooper, and that at one of his parties, he pointed to a hippie family at one of his parties and said that they would find some of his stolen money in 3 days on the North Shore. And then, of course, on February 10th of 1980, Howard Ingram's son found $5,800 on the Columbia River. And everybody's aware of that. That's the money that doesn't look like it literally had sat out there for, 9 years in water.
It was sticking out of the surface. I'm not so sure about that. It was weathered money, but they also found a lot of it that was shredded, that left them to believe that it was dredged up, because they dredged that area of the river to make it a little deeper on a regular basis.
Right.
Some of it
could have been planted.
Yeah, but the bulk of it.
Little side note.
Hold on. Finish, Terry.
The bulk of it was never found.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right, Nolan.
Yeah. On a side note, this is one of the documentaries I've seen on DB Cooper. And a side note too, the name Dan Cooper is taken from a comic book character who was like a stormtrooper hero. I think it was a Canadian comic book.
It was. Yes, it was. Absolutely. So it is believed that Dick Briggs planted the money so his partygoers would find it, and it sounds like it was publicly announced for a purpose. If he did, it shows conspiracy. If it didn't, then Carlson is making the whole thing up after the fact in 2011, which also suggests a conspiracy. So either way you go with this guy, you're looking at a conspiracy. Jack Trimarco of the FBI on Dr. Phil claims that Carlson is telling the truth. Of course, the FBI said that. Let's just go with that. It doesn't prove Briggs was DB, just that he had inside information and knowledge to turn suspicion, is my thought. John Richard Briggs owned an auto repair shop in Portland, Oregon that died at the age of 41 in an auto accident on Taylor Ferry Road. He was not in Vietnam and he couldn't parachute, but evidently he made suspect list at some point. He was...
You know what? You're guaranteed a broken leg on that. In the old days of thinking you can jump out with a parachute and be okay. You're going to get injured. You're going to get hurt. Yeah.
Well, and Briggs, evidently, I'm thinking this John Richard Briggs was related to Dick Briggs somehow, but he had this accident, and I think that there was some questions as to whether or not he was suicided or murdered. So that's what I took from that. And now, finally, would be Rackstraw. And this is actually the legitimate suspect of Bruce Smith. Rackstraw was a member of the Playboy VIP Club, and we saw that at least one letter used the cutouts from Playboy magazines. Rackstraw would call and say he was the president's personal pilot. Rackstraw had $46,000 in bad checks, explosives, and already frauded a plane that he called in as a plane crash over the ocean when he actually landed in LA and repainted the plane and replaced the ID numbers to get over on an insurance scam. The FBI ruled Rackstraw out as Cooper in Norjack, and Bruce Smith of Mountain News covers him being a CIA operative, which makes sense. And he worked for Bell Helicopter in Iran in, let's see, did I not finish my sentence? It looks like I didn't. Oh, and then he married Linda Kunkel in 1974. He was married to her for 2 years. She claimed they traveled like celebrities, which to me, again, that reminds me of the mob. You don't have to be a celebrity if you're the mob. You get treated like a celebrity. So they're going everywhere.
CIA mob. Sorry.
Yeah.
Be a CIA mob front connection.
Correct.
Mhm.
Let's see. Rackstraw opened a print shop in San Jose and forged her name for a loan in 1978. And the FBI runs this particular, or they at least covered this particular fraud that he committed. In 1985 in Nicaragua, I cannot confirm this, but I'm sorry. So they said that he was in Nicaragua in 1985, but I think the FBI said they could not confirm this, which then alluded to them making a statement that that's code for yes, he did. I love cannot confirm or deny.
1985, Nicaragua was Pablo Escobar and cocaine. Sorry.
Well, and
Anyways,
this is all
yeah.
revolving around cocaine. You have a lot of references to cocaine in some of these solves, correct?
Yeah.
Oh,
And that was in the
if
middle.
I had a dime for every time, I'd be rich. Jeez.
What was that, Nolan?
Yeah.
Nicaragua in '85 was in the middle of a civil war. The Sandinistas had taken over, and it was a socialist government under Daniel Ortega, and Ronald Reagan and Ollie North and that crew that's what the Iran-Contra was all about. They were funding the Contras, and they were making deals with the Iranians on one hand and funding the Contras on the other hand, all through the
And Bush
early
was
and
involved
mid-'80s.
with that too, right? Bush was
Well, he was
involved with the
vice
Iran.
president under Reagan, yeah.
Yeah. I cannot confirm nor
Bush was-
deny.
Yeah.
Oliver
Bush,
North
I
and
gotta
all
tell
that.
you, I'm seeing Bush was secretly running the White House. Reagan was a cocaine cowboy. The stuff I'm working on lately, and I'm Republican. It's difficult for me to say that.
Reagan's
Yeah, the
he
Death
slept
Valley
a lot.
days, cocaine cowboy. Yeah, that's him. Jeez.
Reagan was more charming
Yeah,
than
I
Bush
cannot
was.
recall.
I cannot recall. It says that there were
That's
8
Reagan.
cigarettes.
Yeah.
It says that
was
the
just
there are 8 cigarette butts that were with the FBI in Las Vegas, and those have gone missing. Go figure. So DNA is out. The chief of
Mhm.
disguise for the CIA is actually on this episode, and she says that her job in the CIA is to reverse everything about your looks. Witnesses said Cooper was wearing makeup and his hair was shiny like it was dyed. That took me back to the nurse murders and Jack rocking the black hair. We did see him dye his hair black at one point in time, and we have pictures of that where it's growing back out. Rackstraw was some sort of accomplice, but not likely Cooper. Stewardess Tina Mucklow was shown pictures and said suspect had brown eyes, but these could be contacts, and Rackstraw had green eyes. The stewardess also said that Rackstraw was not Cooper, so they're been shown Rackstraw's pictures, and they're saying that's not the person that was on the plane. So it kind of it conflicts with what Bruce Smith thinks. But the chief of disguise I thought was interesting. She said that they would give you a different nose. They would put makeup on you. They would dye your hair. They literally were to reverse everything about your looks so that when you went into one of these operations, you could not be identified afterwards. And that hits home with us because we know that the Zodiac very clearly stated that he doesn't look the same when he does his thing. There's a Canadian connection. This is where that came in. Canadian connection. Dan Cooper is a French pilot, comic book. Albert Weinberg, who visited Royal Canadian Air Force in 60s and 70s in Canada. And the author was Geoffrey Gray. So does that sound familiar, Nolan?
Yep, that's what I was saying earlier. But also, when it comes to the disguises, it's a MO for the CIA and their front organizations. For instance, Howard Hunt was involved in Watergate, and many think he was involved in the Kennedy assassination. He's stated in his book that he always had disguises, different looks for different missions
and different IDs so that should he have to,
Yeah.
should he get caught, he's giving a fake name, they're
Yeah.
going to arrest the wrong person. We've seen this happen in Jack's case where he's been arrested and bonded out and continued to go through probation all under the wrong name. So all of that is completely true. And then, of course, that Dan Cooper comic book, which takes us right back to the Zodiac again with the Dick Tracy comics that he knew about ahead of time and was publishing information that hadn't been shown to the public yet. So again, we have a distinct connection there between Cooper and Zodiac. Lynn Doyle Cooper was a suspect that was never ruled out. Revolting was going on in Canada, thus the Revolution letter by Cooper. And the tie, and this is where the tie comes in. I know you sent me some stuff earlier, Terry, on this, but the tie had pure titanium and stainless steel on it, which is commercially pure, that would be found at places like Boeing, aerospace, and the chemical sector. So the moon landing stamp by the Zodiac and the NASA relation as in Tim Miller letter, and the chemical sector being like the General Electric nuclear power plant. Am I wrapping that up all nicely?
Yeah, there are over 200 highly specialized particles found on the tie by an expert some years later. 200. One of them was lanthanum tantalate, which is an infrared detecting type of a crystal, and that we'll talk about later. But that's so there was
sounds like a valuable tie. I wouldn't have left it behind.
I think it's a message. He left it's a definite message. You know, was that what stuff on it? You know. So,
do you think all of that stuff would have been something that he could have collected working for General Electric?
I think it's stuff he collected.
I believe so.
Yep.
Go ahead, Nolan.
A lot of places.
I think he was supplied with the tie by his handlers.
Yep.
Good possibility.
I think it's bigger than just him. I think the whole operation is bigger than just Dan Cooper.
I think so too. I think so too. All right.
Absolutely.
So we had a letter, and I don't actually actively have this letter, but there was a letter that was mailed November 26, 1971 to it doesn't say who it was, it just says Miss, and then it doesn't state who it was. But the interesting part was it was postmarked from Minnesota, which is one of the stops along the D.B. Cooper flight plan from D.C. to Portland, Oregon. It was addressed to Miss something in South Richfield, Massachusetts. It was a one-page handwritten letter dated November 25th, 1971, beginning, "Dear so-and-so, saw your picture in the paper." And I'm not sure what this is about or why this was in the FOIA files, but I thought I would just throw it in here and then take a look just because the Minnesota connection, and it was on the flight plan of that Flight 305. So I pulled some of the zip codes to see where we would end up with that particular zip code, and it listed so many different places, but that brings us to the very first letter, I believe, in the series that came out, which is "Attention, thanks for hospitality, was in a rut, D.B. Cooper." This was mailed to the Reno newspaper, Reno, Nevada. So hospitality, we've seen hospital reference in many of the Zodiac, the Dear Draft Board letters. Almost every time there's a mention of what happened to the Zodiac or this killer, it's mentioned that either he has died or he's in the hospital or he's in jail. So this runs...
Postmark, California.
Yes, postmark is California, Oakdale, California, which is the Modesto area. And I'm pretty sure that these cutouts came out of the Modesto Bee. So when they said that the suspect was a Portland, Oregon resident, I laughed. I scoffed. Like the first letter that comes out of this caper is mailed out of the Modesto area because that's where Oakdale is in the San Joaquin Valley.
That's just first reactive police response. Okay, he's got to be from Portland, you know.
Which doesn't make any sense.
Like when they surround the airport and they searched the airport in the vicinity when he jumped out way before the airport. You know, it's lazy police work.
And boy, doesn't that letter get to be about a Zodiac Jack as you get? Like he's jumping up and down and saying,
look at the NEV. It has that eerie symbol that we found on the Halloween card. Lots of things. Very similar the way the NEV is written, that is comparative to that the U.S. Steel stamp image.
Combination JTs, everything.
And the R and the Reno, and the whole word Reno is reminiscent of the card to Count Marco.
Right. Yes, the long dragging ends and the finals on the handwriting. Yes, this definitely. What's that?
One of your documents that you should have will be addressed B.D. Cooper.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. We're
just now starting on the very first letter. So I also notated, Nolan, that the writing was like the Red Phantom, which is the Count Marco. The NE formation is indicative of the symbol for Mount Diablo in the Halloween card. The period dots are a running system that's used. And from Oakdale, which is around the corner from Modesto, which is where the abduction of Kathleen Johns happened. So letter number 1, it says it was sent out from Oakdale, California on Saturday, November 27th, 1971. It reached the Reno Evening Gazette on Monday, November 29th, 1971, and was immediately published on page 1 of that evening edition. It reads, "Attention, thanks for the hospitality. Was in a rut, D.B. Cooper." It was a cut and paste letter. This is something that the Zodiac, all the way back to Black Dahlia. I mean, from day one, this man has used this MO. Oh, yeah. It was determined within 2 days that the letters, words, and phrases came from the Friday, November 26, 1971 edition of the Modesto Bee newspaper. Bill Gossett lived in Merced, California for many years prior to 1971, and his first family was eating Thanksgiving dinner in Merced the night after Cooper hijacked Northwest Airlines flight number 305. I'm guessing that the person who wrote this thinks that Bill Gossett is a possible suspect. Merced is about 20 miles from Oakdale, California. The FBI took possession of this letter, and it has never been seen since. Go figure.
Yeah.
One of the first songs.
How much going on?
It's with the cigarette butts and JFK's brain in a vault.
So yes, I did a brief
Viagra.
I did a quick map of the location. We can see that Modesto, California is here. The letter was mailed out of Oakdale, California up here, and they are approximately 14.8 miles from each other. So 27 minutes away, but it is highly likely that the Modesto Bee is actually servicing the entire area. So he could have gotten that newspaper right there in Oakdale, I'm sure. So using an anagramming system.
I believe they were. They were. The Modesto Bee had all of Central California, the people who owned it.
Right. So using an anagram system that Jack taught to Dennis and applied by Harriette, you came up with this solve. So you used all of the wording that's in this particular letter, and you came up with, "Attention, United States, Robert Kennedy shot in hospital. I dare Northeast British Columbia and Northwest Orient Airline to pay for it." Do you recall that solve?
Yes, I do, and I'm looking for it in my book. But there's a lot going on there.
Well, that kind of it kind of hit home because what?
Well, they believe Hoffa's behind killing Kennedy, so there's another.
It's not a cipher.
They're going to bring him down.
It's not a cipher. Okay. She anagrammed the letters on this particular communication.
Okay.
So the words "attention, thanks for hospitality," was in a rut, D.B. Cooper, and the Reno newspaper, Reno, Nevada, was all used in order to complete the anagramming process that read a message that stated, "Attention, United States, Robert Kennedy shot in hospital. I dare Northeast British Columbia and Northwest Orient Airline to pay for it." This kind of reminds me of the fact that Harriette was starting to see solves that indicated that he was upset, that the Zodiac was upset for not getting paid for his little list of people that he killed in retribution for Robert Kennedy. So now to say, "I dare these people to pay for it," is almost as if to say, he was going to collect his money because he's not getting paid from the government, from the politicians that he is reaching out to as a handler. He's not seeing his pay, right, Harriette?
Actually, okay, I'm trying to. The one that I have that's in the book is with the Reno newspaper, Reno, Nevada, Oakdale, etc. In a rut, D.B. Cooper. That one is coming out with.
We're gonna get to that one. We haven't got. This is an old solve that you gave me. So I've had this one in the PowerPoint presentation since back in 2013. So I know that you've expounded upon that since then. Yeah, and we're gonna move right into the one you're talking about right now. So the D.B. Cooper solve on the Reno newspaper. Go ahead and read that solve since you have it.
I was learning more about this system. It just came out as I'll just read what the Reno newspaper, the NEV Oakdale, CA, the zip code 95061, November 27, 1971, President Dwight David Eisenhower, USA, 8 cents, attention, exclamation mark, thanks for hospitality was in a rut, D.B. Cooper. That all anagrammed out to President Nixon, OK, Agnew, USA, spy attack, Op Ratchet, it was to collect money, via a Northwest Orient, 7/16/1971, a tackle spindle line was hid, briefcase door compartment void, ad usum, when land over Reno at the zip code of 89502. So ratchet means ransom. Ad usum is I see him using that a lot. AU is Latin for ad usum. And then the zip code. And that's where Jack, Dennis said a million times that Jack got injured as he had jumped out back there. Busted his shoulder, motorcycle, all kinds of information there. But that's what this is saying. That just like you said, Terry B., that was a fake bomb thing. The compartment void had that, yeah.
Yeah, he probably took it in the bathroom and burned it up. It was just a fake paper copy of a. And they were painted red dynamite sticks, and dynamite's only red in the cartoons. It's actually a different kind of a beige color, like real dynamite. So he's having his little joke there too, by using red dynamite like a cartoon character would use. So.
Well, and I'm interested that the Agnew pops up in the D.B. Cooper messages, because Agnew at this particular time was also forced into resignation. And since he was forced to resign, he then turned around and borrowed $200,000 from Sinatra, and he pays it back within a very short period of time. Like, he almost immediately pays this money back to Sinatra. So where did that $200,000 come from? If he had access to that kind of money, why did he even need to borrow it? First off, and second off, being able to pay it back so quickly indicates that he came into some money rather fast. So this might be connected somehow, right?
Possibly.
Yeah, it's.
And the reason Agnew was forced out was because he was caught red-handed taking bribes when he was the governor of Maryland.
Right.
And the reason Nixon put him on the ticket, he was one of the part of the most conservative parts of the Republican Party, and Nixon wanted the support of the hardline Republicans. And because there were other more conservative Republicans than Nixon running. So he brought Agnew on the ticket for that. Then when Agnew was vice president, he still kept taking bribes. So he finally had to go. They ran him out before they ran out Nixon.
Right.
Wow.
That's one of those things with politics. They end up taking somebody they didn't really want to take, but they have to. It's politics. Yeah.
Well, then we have this. So we have the first letter coming out of Oakdale, California. The second letter that follows actually comes out of Canada. So on November 30th, 1971, we receive a letter that's mailed to the chief editor of the province in Vancouver. And it says the composite does not reflect the truth. So this is the first time that he is stating that whatever the FBI has put together as a composite doesn't reflect the truth. And the only person I've seen so far that has ever been willing to put a communication out there telling law enforcement that they got it wrong was the Zodiac. I've never seen this occur before, and probably we never will again. But here it is. It says, Chief Editor, the province. The composite drawing on page 3, as suspected, does not represent the truth. I enjoyed the Grey Cup game and am leaving Vancouver. Thank you for your hospitality, D.B. Cooper. So we've got the hospitality thing going again. Go ahead, Terry.
And you matched this handwriting to Jack's hand a long time ago.
We're going to actually get to that point because I just found the clearest version in Harriette's book that I've ever seen. This was a little too muddled. It does have the overall gestalt of the Voinovich letters, the Scorpion letters to John Walsh. It does have the overall image for me is very similar, and the thickness, the weight of the writing. So let me just run down this letter real quick. November 30th, 1971, composite does not reflect the truth. The Vancouver province newspaper is where it was mailed from Vancouver. British Columbia in Canada, says he got it wrong. That's Zodiac 101. He watched a game which runs in tandem with Zodiac's fun and games. Hospitality is mentioned again. Handwriting is indicative of Scorpion letters to John Walsh in 1991, which is a 20-year anniversary of this. I do find anniversarial communications where we are seeing 20, 30, 50 years apart, that the same style of handwriting or the MO in the disguise of the handwriting is similar. Canada and the U.S. share a relationship unlike any other in the world. The U.S. Armed Forces, as well as most government departments in most countries, are being mandated to make the most of what funding it has. If a stable and trusted facility exists, it makes sense to purchase services when needed rather than operate a base. If secure military access is needed, then arrangements can be made to use Canadian forces bases. The same holds true for if Canada needed to access U.S. soil. So we run hand in hand, evidently, with these people.
Yep.
So here I just juxtaposed this particular writing to the Scorpion letters so that everybody can see what I'm talking about in regards to the setup of the communication. The overall gestalt for Cooper's Vancouver letter is most similar to the Scorpion letters to John Walsh. And it's also no coincidence that Cooper letters were 1971 and the Scorpion letters were written in 1991, which is an anniversary. That brings me to this particular, no, I think, oh, there's Harriette's. Okay. So basically in this one, I put over here the Zodiac's letter where it says, I look like the description passed out only when I do my thing. The rest of the time I look entirely different. So there he is to tell them that, yes, that composite is reflective of who I am, but not who I look like daily. So he is admitting to disguise that's occurring. Letter number 2, it was a hand-printed and mailed from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada to the Vancouver Province Editor's Office. The province published the letter on Wednesday, December 1st, 1971, but the postage date was Tuesday, November 30th, 1971. The letter was taken by the Vancouver Police Department and never seen again. The composite drawing on page 3 is suspected by FBI does not represent the truth. I enjoyed the Grey Cup game and leaving Vancouver now. Thanks for your hospitality, GB Cooper. The Grey Cup game is the Canadians' version of the Super Bowl and was played on Sunday, November 28th, 1971 in Vancouver. The hijacker first saw the FBI's sketch of himself in the Monday, November 29th, 1971 newspaper and apparently didn't like the drawing by the FBI. The words, thanks for the hospitality, appeared again in a letter that was sent in the Vancouver, British Columbia, a long ways from Reno, Nevada. This is the same author of both letters, a man on the run and taunting the FBI. He says that his suspect, Gossett, liked football, he liked Canada, and he used the phrase, thanks for your hospitality, often. So this person, whoever wrote this, is definitely on to Gossett as the DB Cooper suspect. That's the last minute we have. If anybody wants to share anything, we're going to pick up and do the solve for this next week. So does anybody want to add anything?
Well, hospitality must be some sort of a signal or a message, right, that we haven't yet addressed as such, but I have to tell you, I'm
I think the root word hospital is the clue there. And he's always adding the ITY on afterwards.
Right.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's kind of a throwback to what Zodiac, how he breaks up his words quite often.
Right. Exactly.
That's a good point. That's good. That's what I'm getting at.
Anything from you, Harriette?
Hey, happy St. Patrick's Day, especially to those of us with a touch of Irish blood in us. So
happy St. Patty's Day
this weekend.
It's coming up.
Oh.
Yes, it
Yay.
is. All right. Well, everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah.
Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Thank you guys for being here, and we will pick up where we left off next week. Everyone have a wonderful weekend.
Bye.
San Diego is much sunnier today.
Yeah.
It's beautiful today.
Yes, it is. If you're not where the tornadoes are.
All right, you guys, take care. Happy St. Patty's Day.
Oh,